Well, hey, Ballard Church, so glad you decided to join us this Sunday, or really whenever you're tuning in online. We're kicking off a brand new series this week, and I'll admit it, this might be my most clickbaity series title I've ever come up with. This might be the biggest kind of tease in for what it might be, because this series, we're going to be talking about how to talk your way out of anything. How to talk your way out of anything. And immediately, I guarantee what comes to mind for you is two things. One, what does this have to do with Jesus? This has nothing to do with Jesus. Did Jesus talk his way out of stuff? I don't know. We're about to find out. The second one is, if this gets you out of your next parking ticket or your next speeding ticket, maybe out of your next fight with your spouse, then maybe this could be a beneficial series for you. But honestly, this is not really the direction that we're going to go. We're going to be talking about the power of our words, and if we're not careful, really what this can get us into. So what I want to do is just get this out of the way right away. I want to tell you what the main point, the big idea, the big drive. So if you lose internet, lose power, if the internet goes away, like the world decides internet's no longer going to be a thing, at least you have the big idea of where we're going to be going over the next few weeks. When it comes to the power of our words, it's simply this. If you aren't careful with your words, you can talk your way out of the most important things God has put in your life. If you're not careful, you can talk your way right out of the most important things God has set up for you. You can talk your way out of the most significant relationships of your life. You know that to be true. You can talk your way out of opportunity. You can talk your way out of self-confidence. You can talk your way out of a relationship and intimacy with God. And so we know there's power in our words, and if we aren't careful, if we don't steward it well, I think it can get us into trouble. I was reading an article recently about everything that goes into our words as I was studying and preparing for this series, and I found some statistics to be absolutely startling to me. This is wild to me of how flippant we are with our words. The opportunity we have to produce them and create them is absolutely unbelievable. There are 306 billion emails, 4.5 trillion text messages, 500 million tweets, 525 million hours of YouTube, and 2.5 quintillion bytes of data produced every day around the world. Just in one day, 500 million tweets are put out into the world. And of that, 500 million tweets are useless. I mean, it's unbelievable the things that we're able to produce. 4.5 trillion text messages. You know that one person in any context who's always just firing away on their phone. It's unbelievable to see what's happening. In fact, in the same study, in the same article, they came out with this conclusion. This was baffling to me, that in every year since the production of social media, and its creation, and really the digitization of our world, in 1 year, we produce more words than we did in the entirety of human history before it. Catch that. That's unbelievable. Even as the years go on, exponentially, there's more production in our words. There used to be confinements and constraints to our words. We used to only be able to speak to one another face-to-face, like proximity was a barrier. Or do you remember when you used to have a phone that was actually connected to the wall? Some of you remember like a rotary phone, but that's like way back. That's not really my time. But I remember growing up, and you had the phone with the little swirly like pigtail cord that would go over to the phone that was connected to the wall there, and you would play with your finger in it. You'd wrap it around. You'd do your thing. You were tethered to one spot. You could only call someone when you knew they were going to be next to a physical phone as well. There was no cell phone usage. And now that it's become easier and easier to talk to people, I think it gets really, really dangerous. We used to have to craft our words and be strategic. If you were going to write a letter, you were really eloquent and intentional with what you put down on paper. But nowadays, you can just start hammering away at a keyboard, or you can figure out on your phone the easiest way to produce words. And what we know, and what you know to be true, is when you can produce something easier, when access is more available, that you start to just take advantage of it. It's like for me when I was a kid, I used to love when we'd get soda because it was a special treat. It was like this thing you'd cherish. We didn't get it that often. And I remember you'd go to the store, and every once in a while at the grocery store, there was a Shasta cola machine. Anyone who knows Shasta, you're the real people out there. And my dad would sometimes give us a quarter, and we'd go in and we'd get a Shasta. And it was great, a little grape soda, a little orange soda. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And it was so good. But now, as an adult, I can go to the store whenever I want and buy as much soda as I want. And so as the availability gets easier, so does my discretion. And sometimes it can just be less special. It can be less significant. So this becomes true when it comes to our words. We know that this is true. Today, we can produce with little effort and even less accountability. The same way that I drink soda, it's little effort and there's no accountability. The same way they use your words. It's the same way that you see words being used on social media. It's the same way you see with all these different news channels and all these different mediums and all these people competing and vying to get their opinion and attention, to grab your focus and to shape the narrative. There's very little accountability nowadays to the news. And now the point of this series is not going to be a social critique. I'm not going to sit here and say like, hey, the world needs to figure it out. I'm going to let you decide that. But as followers of Jesus, I think the Bible is very, very clear about the power of our words. In fact, in the Old Testament, there's this guy named Solomon who's said to be, it was given the gift of wisdom by God. It's a pretty incredible gift. And he wrote these incredibly wise words in Proverbs. He said this, "The tongue has the power of life and death, and to those who love it will eat its fruit." Now the tongue, he's using that as an illustration here, but our words have the power of life and death. Our words have the power to build people up or tear them down. Our words have the power to create unity or division. Our words can encourage somebody or bring shame and frustration into their life. Our words can create relationships and they can break them. Our words can do so many different things. You know this to be true. In fact, I guarantee that you've experienced this. And debating on whether or not you love it, whether you love it for its life or whether you love it for its death, you will ultimately eat the fruit of the decisions you make with your words. And this all really traces back to a theological point, that when we think about this theologically, when it comes to our words, we believe that it's more than just something that we can quickly say, but we believe they have power. Why? Because God's words have power. When we look to Genesis, we see that God created the heavens and the earth with simply words, that Jesus created miracles, that he healed people, that he did phenomenal things with just speaking it. And if we believe, as we do, as the Bible teaches us, that we are created in God's image, then we too have power associated with our words. Your words have power because God's words have power as well. The big question is, what are we going to do with it? The big question becomes, what do we do with the words that bring so much power? How do we ensure the fact that even though our words can be used to get ourselves out of the most important things that God has set before us, that our words can also be used to keep us grounded and rooted in the calling that God has for each and every one of our lives? And isn't that where all of us want to be? Especially if you're a follower of Jesus watching this today. Isn't that what we're called to do? Is to leverage our words for something greater, leverage our lives for God's kingdom. There was a research study that came out a few years ago in Harvard Business Review, and it was really big a few years back to talk about, from a research perspective, the power of words. It was interesting to see all the things that they came up with, and they cited a psychological researcher named John Gottman, and he had tons of stuff to say. He's been a marriage and divorce counselor for number of years, and he's done some really heavy research into the power of words. Is that he studied different couples and did different research. He was able to predict with startling statistical analysis, like the power of our words. He was able to see some really incredible things. And what he came to when it came to positive and negative speech, he came to a ratio. He said, if you're going to be healthy when it comes to your relationships, that you need to have this very particular ratio in place. And he was talking about it in the context of a romantic relationship or in marriage. And here's the ratio that he came up with. He said that you need 5 positive words to every 1 negative word. You need 5 positive words to every 1 negative word, and you're going to find yourself in a healthy relationship. And believe it or not, based on this finding, he discovered that he could predict with 94% accuracy whether or not a couple would make it in the long run or get divorced simply based on this ratio in his research. Isn't that amazing that he could determine whether or not a relationship is going to be healthy or not? And based on John Gottman's research, the business world stepped in and they said, man, we want to figure out what it takes to create a healthy team. What's going to be, if you're on a team at Amazon, if you're at Microsoft, wherever you guys are at, what's going to be a healthy, cohesive team environment? What does it need to do when it comes to our words? And wouldn't you know it, they did the research and they found the most productive, healthy, effective teams had this same ratio. If you go back one, it's 5-to-1, positive to negative. That's what they came up with. And again, now after Gottman comes in and the business comes in, then child psychologists come in, they said, okay, if you're going to raise kids that are well-rounded, confident, and really have a good view of the world that they would consider to be healthy kids, wouldn't you know it, they found that the great ratio is 5 positive words to every 1 negative. Isn't that amazing? 5-to-1 is what it ends up being. And don't get me wrong, the 1 is really important. Notice it's not 6-to-none. It's not like, hey, every word has to be positive. That's not what I'm saying. There needs to be moments of discipline and correction. It's not like I walk up to my daughter and say like, hey, way to go pushing your little sister over. You really put all your weight behind that one. That's like, no, in those moments you need correction. You need discipline. And also what I'm not saying is like, hey, so because it's 5-to-1, let's really take advantage of the 1. Like you need to say 5 good things and then you drive the dagger deep because you only get 1 in 5. So you better just really get them with the 1 that you have and then just cushion it with 5. This is not the sandwich technique. I think it's a healthy way of having a negative word to somebody. It's correction or challenge. It's setting boundaries and parameters. Those are healthy and okay. But you want to know the sad part? The sad part is that according to the average relationship, this is what we see according to the data, average couples and teams work with the ratio of 1 positive word to 3 negative words. Average couples, like normal, everyday couples who are just making it through, normal, everyday teams like the one that you may be on or the ones that some of us have been a part of before in the past, their average, if we don't take care of this, if we don't steward it, if we don't pay attention to it, the gravitational pull is 1 positive word for every 3 negative words. And in comparison, that feels pretty disheartening. But you want to get even more honest? If I look on social media, they don't even hit that ratio. If I look on the news, I don't see the news being 1 positive to 3 negative. So if we want to continue to create a culture that we're creating, where division is normative, where frustration and anxiety, where fear, where the mishandling of our words with very little accountability is creating something with real power, that we can't be surprised when we look at the study, when we look at what the Bible teaches us as well as when we look to what is taught, because we know this when it comes to our words, they can be used for good or for evil. As you look back in your life, I can imagine this, that some of the greatest moments of your life have to do with words. That some of the greatest encouragements you've ever received, some of the greatest things you've ever heard, and some of the greatest things everyone ever told you had to do with words. And at the same time, on the flip side, as much as it can be used for good, it can also be used to harm, because some of the hardest memories of your life also have to do with words. Something someone said to be funny, but it wasn't funny. Something somebody said out of anger, something somebody said out of jealousy or contentment. Maybe the things that you regret saying the most in your life have to do with mishandling your words. And if we really think about it, maybe think about it this way. That's why you can remember what somebody said about you 5 years ago, but you can't remember what somebody said 5 minutes ago, right? Because if it has to do with you and if it has to do with your identity, you can remember it for years and years and years. But flippantly, if someone's just talking to you about the weather or their dog or something, you're like, okay, that's somewhat interesting. It doesn't really stick in the same way because our words have power. And I want to dial in on one last verse here. And today, if you're wondering, hey, where's this all going? We're setting the stage for the rest of the weeks to come as we're really talking about some of the specific areas where you can talk yourself out of something God has placed before you that could be so significant, and maybe avoiding some of the pitfalls that our words can bring about. But this is one verse that, man, if we get this, I think it could change everything as followers of Jesus. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths. Don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths. And this is from the Apostle Paul in Ephesians. And what I love about this, you ready for this? What I love is that I think he's realistic in this. It says, don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths. And then why I love that is because it doesn't say, don't let any unwholesome talk come to mind. Because sometimes somebody says something or you see something and you think to yourself the worst things. Like I see some people do things in traffic. I see some people do things in life. And the things that come to mind, ooh, man, they are juicy. They are ripe. Maybe for you, things that come to your mind are like a sailor comes to mind. And they are full of spicy language and colorful things. And sometimes, as a follower of Jesus, one of the biggest faith steps that we can take is to stop those thoughts right here in our throat, to stop them and not allow them to come out of our mouths. Because what he teaches us is, sometimes our thoughts can be frustrated, our thoughts can be clouded, but what if we just took the discipline to realize, stop, see the power of our words in the moment, and not let anything unproductive or unwholesome come out of your mouth. In the moments of frustration, I realize it can be so challenging. And so maybe here's an honest question that you can start to ask yourself that might be helpful along the way. Am I saying this to make a point or to make a difference? Am I saying this to make a point or to make a difference? Because a lot of times I love to make a point. I love to make my opinion known. I love that people would see me in a certain light. I love to really discipline certain behaviors. I like to call out certain things, but really, is it going to make a difference in somebody's life, or am I just saying it to make a point, to make myself feel better, to make myself feel smarter, to feel like I have more power in the situation? Or am I really trying to make a difference in somebody else's life the same way that God would want to? So when we continue on in the verse, Paul really gives us some solutions, not just to stop it here and walk away, but instead, what if we started to do this? Don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up in accordance to their needs. Not your needs, not according to what you want into the situation, not according to your desires or your opinions, but what's going to build them up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. What if that was the filter for followers of Jesus? What if that was our filter? Don't you want to be known amidst your friend group, with your kids, with your parents, with your family, with those that you love, your friends, your spouse, maybe your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your spouse one day? Don't you want to be known as somebody who builds others up? Don't you want to be described as that person when people think about you, they're like, I can't wait to be around them because they leverage their words to build me up and make me feel like a champion. They're not thinking about their own needs, but instead they're always using their words. They're stewarding them so well so that my needs are met in the moment. What if I was a benefit to those who listen? And this next part, if you're a follower of Jesus, this is really for us. This is not just a challenge, this is a command, but what if we had the opportunity to use our words to help people draw closer to God rather than further away? What if our words communicated God's hope, grace, love, and compassion into somebody else's life? What if we thought about it this way? What if we speak in a way that others want to know more about God, not less? Because unfortunately, I'm just going to be honest, the way that I believe faith in the church and Jesus have been portrayed, especially his followers, in the narrative of the media, if you were to take a poll on the street, I think a lot of times the way that we communicate flippantly, if we're not careful as followers of Jesus with our words, that a lot of times people want to know less about our relationship with God rather than more. The way we teach and the way we treat each other and the way that we bring respect to the people around us and treat them with the respect that God has inherently given them, regardless of their decisions or choices, that God would look at people as sons and daughters of Christ, that they are beautifully and wonderfully made. If we were to talk about people behind their backs that way, if we were to speak about people with that tone and cadence, I think people would want to know more about our God and not less. I think people would want to know more about our faith and not less, because the power of our words cannot be understated. I remember when I was in high school, I was trying to, like any high schooler, figure out what my life was going to look like. And I remember, I think I was a junior in high school, and for the first time, I hadn't been going to church that long, but they asked me to do a little talk in front of some of the group, like a little talk. They called it a devotion. I didn't really know what that means. I had to get more clarity, like a little tiny thought where you take a little bit of the Bible and you talk about it a little bit and you encourage them. I can't remember what I talked about. I guarantee it was horrible, and I guarantee it probably was blasphemy. It probably wasn't even from the Bible, but I know this to be true. It doesn't matter really what I talked about in the moment. That's not what stands out to me. But what stands out to me, I remember this. I can't even remember the person's name, but they came up to me afterwards. They looked at me and said, "Hey, that was so good. You should do this more. The thing that you just did, you should do that more. You should tell people about Jesus more because you're good at it." And I know it sounds crazy. It was one of the leaders of our youth group. I can't remember their name, but their name wasn't important. Their words stuck with me for life. Their words stuck in the back of my head. Their words continued to reiterate confidence, to bring up courage and self-esteem, to bring up self-worth and confidence that I could follow God in a way and I could teach about Him in a way that would help others experience His love, grace, and hope as well. I mean, that was absolutely amazing to me. It was startling and life-changing to start to realize that I had power in my words. Before I was a lead pastor, the first thing that I did vocationally in ministry was working with youth. I was a youth pastor. I worked with middle school students. I worked with high school students, and it was some of the most fun years of my life. And my wife and I just got to have a blast investing in high school kids. And not too long ago, I had a high school student reach out to me that I hadn't talked to in forever. It had been so long. And they reached out to me and they said, "Hey, we just got done with college. I just got engaged," which I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you're getting married. I feel old, but that's fine. Like, you're figuring it out." And they were talking to me and they said, "Hey, college had its ups and downs and it was difficult, but I always remember what you said to me at that one camp when you pulled me aside. And you said, God has great things for your future, and I believe that you're gonna do something amazing as you continue to follow Him." And he's like, "I don't know why, but that stuck with me for so long, and it still sticks with me today." And I didn't really have the guts because it felt like bad social form to be like, "Yeah, I don't remember that at all." Like, I don't remember saying that at all. It sounds like something I would say, I guess, and I'm really glad I said it, but I don't remember saying it. And isn't it interesting, and even when we're not aware of it, that our words still carry power? So for all of us, as we head in for the next few weeks, and maybe this could be something that we focus on tangibly during the week, is how am I leveraging the power of my words? Because your words have power. Even if you don't feel like you have influence, even if you don't feel like you're a leader, even if you don't feel like there's a ton of people following or listening to you, let me just encourage you for a moment that your words have power. And exactly like Solomon said, they can bring life or death, and the choice is yours. And over these next few weeks, why don't we figure out how to steward that well? If we do, I promise you this, it could change our relationships, it could change our calling, it could change our opportunities, it could change our relationship with God, and it could even change our view of ourselves. I can't wait to unpack them a little bit more, but for now, I want to pray for you. God, thank you so much for everybody watching at home. I want to speak hope over them. I want to speak life over them. As Jesus, we head into another incredible season of learning and figuring out what you would want to teach us through your word and your example. Jesus, I just pray that right now you'd bring to surface our speech, the way that we communicate to one another. Help us really live in a way that we hold ourselves accountable to our words, that we are making things better, not worse, that we hold tight to a ratio of positive words to negative. That, God, we try to bring encouragement to the people around us. For those that are watching that feel discouraged right now, that are having a hard time letting go of words that were said that brought death instead of life, Jesus, I just pray right now that you would bring freedom, that you'd bring hope, that your words would replace the words spoken over them. And Jesus, that you would bring encouragement and joy and ultimately life through your words. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen and amen. Well, God bless you guys. I can't wait for week 2 coming up next week of how to talk your way out of anything.